Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, where we explore the lives of women who embody the spirit of biblical heroines in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and today we have a very special guest, my dear friend Julia. Julia is a first-time mom and a gifted singer whose life is a testament to the power of faith and music. In this episode, we'll be drawing parallels between Julia's journey and that of Hannah from the Bible, a woman known for her great faith, her beautiful song of praise, and her devotion to God as a mother. Stay tuned as we dive into this inspiring conversation. Julia, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
And just so you all know, Julia is, as I mentioned, a first-time mom, and it's currently bath time, she told me before this, so I personally am so thankful for her taking the time out of her busy baby evening to be here, and you are such a special human to me, and so I'm just so grateful that you could spend time with me tonight, even for just a little bit. I don't get to see you often, so even just seeing you remotely is such a special gift. So to start, can you tell the audience a little bit about how we know each other, maybe a favorite memory or a story, so that people can know how we're connected?
Yes, I can. I think the first time we ever met, I believe, was in college. You were looking for a new roommate situation. And so you came over to my apartment because my roommate was a mutual friend of ours. And I remember being so surprised when I saw you for the first time because I didn't know you were coming over and I didn't know who you were. My roommate did not tell me. So I just walked out into my living room and you were standing there. And I remember my first impression of you being that you were so cool. I was very intimidated of you at first. I was like, oh, this girl is very chill, very cool. I don't know if we can hang out. I'm very silly and goofy and she's very I don't know, she might be too cool for me. That was the first impression of you.
I am so honored that you said that. It's probably because when I meet people for the first time, I'm very laid back. And so I try to tell myself, don't mess this up. Be chill. And I'm sure you can agree, once we were roommates for long enough, you and I definitely both agreed that we're both almost the same vibe. We're both very silly, very goofy, and I think we just have such fond memories of living together. You and I lived together even alone for, was it just our senior year? I think it was my last year of school. You and I were both just living together alone, and you drew me out of actually a very difficult situation. I had just been broken up with, as you remember, and I didn't know anybody going into Azusa Pacific, and so it was just kind of a really scary situation that you saved me from, and I still look back and I'm so thankful for the friendship that God blessed me with in you, and I am just so because a lot of people don't look back at their college experience with roommates, not many of them anyways, and say, wow, my college roommate is one of my best friends, and I am so thankful that I get to look back and say that for myself. So I love that we were college roommates, and I will always be thankful that you and I have that experience to share together.
Totally. I feel exactly the same way, and I know both of us probably had less than stellar roommates in the past. So I'm also just so grateful that this roommate situation turned out absolutely the best case scenario I could have ever imagined.
Definitely. So we're not going to be able to give advice to people today who have had well, we could, but that's not our story, at least. And so
I think my advice is I was blessed with Ariana, so I don't know, pray, I guess, that you find your roommate soulmate. I don't know.
Oh, I love it. Yes, we're going to go into a little bit later talking about some of the things that are joys to both of us that we share. So that's going to be really fun to talk about. But before we get into that, I want to introduce the story of Hannah, who we're going to be comparing you to today, Julia. So her story can be found in the early chapters of 1 Samuel. She's the mother of the prophet Samuel, one of the most significant figures in Israel's history. Now, Hannah's story is one of deep faith, heartfelt prayer, and ultimate devotion to God. After dedicating Samuel, Hannah offered a beautiful prayer of praise, often referred to as Hannah's song. This song is a profound expression of her joy and gratitude to God. It highlights themes of God's sovereignty, his care for the humble and oppressed, and his power to reverse human fortunes, lifting the lowly and bringing down the proud. Now, to transition, I want to read an excerpt from Hannah's song, as I mentioned. This is 1 Samuel chapter 2, starting in verse 1. She says, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord, my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God." So, Julia, I'm excited to hear more about your journey as a new mom and musician. So let's start a little bit with your background. Can you tell us about your journey into motherhood and how your musical career has evolved alongside it? Now, maybe you can start by talking about your musical career, because that's what we both kind of went through in college together. So maybe you can talk about your major and how your major has helped to kind of push you into your passion for music today.
Absolutely. Yes, I was a music major in college. I focus on vocal performance. That was my dedication in college. And actually in college is when I figured out that maybe performing was not like everything in my career that I wanted to do. So that was a scary, confusing time, really, because my whole life up to college, I had always performed, I always sang, and that's all I knew. But you know, you have new experiences in university, and you realize that there's so many other things out there that you can do. So, but that's what I studied. And after graduating, I was working at a music studio teaching private music lessons, mostly voice lessons, but also a little bit of piano here and there. Most of my students were aged like 5 to 15, I would say, years old. So I was mostly working with kids, and I loved this job. It was so much fun, super rewarding. I loved being able to work one-on-one with my students. And that was like a huge shift from what I was learning in college and what I thought I wanted to do. But once I learned that I was pregnant, I switched over to teaching at a school. So I was the elementary music teacher there, which meant I had a similar age range of students, but teaching in a classroom was so different, and for me, super hard. I went from having 30 students in my studio, about 30 students, to about 500 students at this school. I went through all 3 trimesters of my pregnancy at this job. And on top of that, I did not have a classroom. So I was a traveling teacher, which meant that I had to carry all of my teaching supplies, my curriculum, all my instruments all over campus. And that was really, really difficult. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine me like literally waddling around with all my stuff. So that was really tricky. And I obviously I never even heard of a traveling teacher before, even in school, even in college. So that was a whole new experience. I didn't even know that was a career as a musician that I could have. So I gave birth towards the end of the school year. So luckily I was able to kind of take a big break after a blessed break from music for a while, which was definitely needed after such a difficult job. But now that my son is born and he's growing, I love being with him, but I'm also really excited to eventually jump back into music. Luckily for me, music can be so flexible. And I have a lot of options when it comes to my career, whether I want to jump back into teaching, which I don't know if I want to go back into teaching at a school, but the studio I loved. So I could do teaching, performing, I could do writing. There are so many things that are available to me, but that is kind of the basics of it.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I just remember you as a person who, whenever I was home, it was easy to tell that you were home too, because either one, you were always humming or singing, or you were playing on your piano, your keyboard. that you had,
My
which
little orange keyboard. All of us had that dumb little keyboard.
but it was just such a comforting thing to have around. I mean, there are so many like annoying sounds that roommates can make, but yours was such a beautiful sound and just another thing to be thankful for. And so I'm sure you've carried that into your home now. And Lucas, your husband, loves to sing. And I'm sure you kept singing as you were pregnant. So, how have you seen kind of your musicality blend in with your family? Are there any things that you enjoy doing around your son or just as a family unit that you would like to talk about?
Yes, absolutely. My husband does love to sing, and he is a great guitar player.
He
So we
is.
are singing to our baby every single day. He cannot escape the music in the house. It's constant. It's everywhere. We have a little like recorder that we play little songs on for him. So yeah, we're always singing to him. I have so many recordings of my husband and me singing to our son, and he's just staring at us like, "Guys, please, it's too much now." But hopefully, when he's older, it will also be a comfort to him. Music means so much to our little family. Lucas and I both were worship leaders for a long time. So there's a lot of that happening. There's a lot of gospel worship music happening in our house at all times. And for me, at least, it is a very comforting sound to hear. And listening to all of the little songs that I used to sing when I was a kid in like the kids choir, like Jesus loves me, this little light of mine. Now I get to sing that with my baby and teach him those. And that's so exciting. And it is very comforting to hear.
That's so fun. I'm sure it is comforting to him and it will be something that becomes even more comforting later on in his life.
I hope
So that's
so.
such a fun. We'll promise that, okay? We'll just make sure that he knows how lucky he is. Otherwise it would be someone else singing really bad. So at least he has talented parents as musicians. I think that's a wonderful blessing to pass on to your son. And kind of as we go into reflecting on Hannah's story, she offered a song of praise to God after the birth of her son, Samuel. So as a singer, how do you express music in a way that shows your faith, especially in your new role as a mother? I know you just talked about singing old worship or gospel songs to your son and in your family, but is there another way you've seen worship music transition as a mom?
Absolutely. I think before becoming a mom, my worship was so different. I used to worship with like awe and praise, and I still do, but now my worship is really focused on like thankfulness and being of service. Because as a mom to my son, I am really like a vessel for God to work through my son. Like I'm just his caretaker for now, but God is in control of the plans, right? So that's really what my worship is focusing on now. And I didn't really realize this until recently, that this was really happening. But all of my praise, all of my worship, everything, all my music, everything that I sing is really focused on like, thank you. And how can I be of service to you through this little baby?
That's amazing. It's actually really impressive that you've been able to recognize that switch that's happened in you. I think a lot of times we can kind of become numb to worship, especially if it's something we do all the time, even if we have an appreciation for it, like singing. I think that that's really cool that you're able to consciously recognize, like, oh, my view of worship is changing as I'm doing it in a different environment and kind of for a different reason this time as a mom. So that's a really cool thing that you've been able to recognize. And in the same vein, Hannah had a lot of trust in God during her journey as well. You know, she was a vessel for her son, and she was able to trust God in this role as a mother to a prophet, and it's really inspiring. So how have you seen your faith be strengthened or challenged in this new season of life? I think that, I mean, I know you, and you're a very calm person. You are always collected. Any like tough decision or tough situation, you're always like, yeah, we'll deal with it. And so I've always visualized you as a mom of like, if there's a tantrum happening, she's probably not phased at all. So, I mean, I guess if there's a good day or a bad day, how have you seen your faith either strengthen you or maybe you've had to like pull it in a little bit more?
I think both have happened for sure. When you're in like the really low lows of being a parent and you really struggling, you can't help but feel bad or lonely or even abandoned by God at times. And it's really hard to pull yourself up and out of that. At the same time, though, I can't help but look at my son and not think about how great God is and what a gift my son is. And so I think my faith has been challenged for sure, but also motherhood has given me a new perspective on my faith, and it's definitely been strengthened also. My role as a mom is to be a role model for my son. And so that really changes my perspective as well. Everything I do, everything I say, my son is watching. And it's a big responsibility to be the one that guides him and shows him how to love like Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. I think that someone who already has a lot of patience like you do, that's what I fear. If I ever become a parent, I feel like my patience is very low. So that's something that I will have to be praying for personally, and I will have to come running to you for help for, because by that time, who knows? Your son may be 5 by the time I have a kid. I don't know. But either way, it's something to just look up to. I think that a lot of my friends who are about my age and are becoming parents, I've seen that. I've seen a lot of patience and a lot of reliance on their faith, which is just, again, impressive and something to look up to for sure. So the last question about Hannah here I want to ask you is that Hannah dedicated her son to the Lord, trusting him with Samuel's life. And as a new mom, how do you navigate the balance of caring for your child? Like you said earlier, kind of vessel, you're his caretaker. So how do you balance that, caring for your child while trusting God with their future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I find a lot of comfort in the fact that God already knows his plans for my son. So I'm not 100% in the driver's seat, so to speak. God is really in control here. I'm my son's caretaker on earth, but God is his caretaker in every sense. So I'm really just along for the ride. I know that I'm supposed to do my very best to love him and support him, and God is going to take care of us no matter what. If we remain faithful to him, that's all that he needs. So it is at first especially, it was very intimidating to be like, oh, I have this little life and I'm in charge of it. But actually, especially after we did my son's baby dedication in church, listening to our pastor kind of say the same things that I'm saying right now, I'm like, oh, duh. obviously it's not all on me. Let me just humble myself really fast. I'm not the only person that's in charge here. God is in control of everything else.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that I think other friends who have become moms have had to realize. I think as women, we already feel just very maternal. That's our instinct. And I remember my friend telling me a story when her daughter was a newborn, and I was asking her what was something that I could pray for. And she said that she wanted me to pray that she could just get her daughter outside in a stroller on a walk, because she was like nervous about bringing her daughter outside. And I had never thought about that. Again, I'm someone with little patience, but also kind of nonchalant about some things. But I was like, oh, yes, that is probably a very real reality.
I remember, especially in my son's newborn days, I was just like that. I was like, I can't take him anywhere. I can't even like bring him onto the porch of my house. Like, what if he starts crying and screaming? What if he needs something? What if he instantly falls asleep somehow and I need to put him in his crib? Like, there's so many anxieties, especially in those first couple of weeks.
Sure.
And then you get the hang of it. You get the practice, and
Yeah.
you learn that you are bigger than this problem. It's really gonna be okay.
And even those little anxieties are kind of helping you to prepare for the bigger ones as they get older. And
I know. If I'm struggling with just like bringing him outside, like, good thing that it's all baby steps, right? This is what I have to deal with right now. When he's a teenager, I'm sure it will be just as hard in a different way.
Yes, there will be new steps that we have to cross at that boundary.
Yeah.
Julia, thank you so much for sharing all that. I'm sure that it's very encouraging for other mothers to hear as they're entering a newborn phase or even just the phase that your son is in. So thank you for sharing that. And as we continue, I kind of want to ask you some questions that will allow our listeners to get to know you a little better. I know we talked about how you compare to Hannah, but let's go into a little bit about you yourself. So as I mentioned earlier, you and I have a very big affinity and love for Disney. I remember our driving trips to even just downtown Disney because we just needed to be there and get a little bit of Disney in it. And you and I had little like Disney figurines, and oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that you are just as obsessed as I am, because that was just something that we bonded over and it was so fun to talk about. So for the both of us, Disney was kind of something that not only we enjoyed, but we had a deep appreciation for, which I think some people now find silly and funny, but I think that your answer might help to convince them. So how do you think that the sense of wonder and creativity, because you are a creative artist, that Disney inspires has influenced your approach to music and in life in general?
I think Disney is a great reminder to dream big. And as a musician, you often face a lot of rejection and failure before you find your success. So it's important to keep your dreams front and center so that you don't lose sight of what is important to you, what all of this is for, what you're working towards. So many Disney stories are about that. All my favorite Disney movies are about, what happens if you dream big? What happens if you just go for it? What happens if you have a dream and you make the moves to go get it? And I know that Disney does seem very silly to most people, but there's always that like underlying message of magic and wonder. And I think that for me as a creative person, it does spark a lot of inspiration for me. And, you just listen to a Disney soundtrack and it takes you somewhere else. It's so meticulously well done. There are so many moving parts, so many different pieces. And now we have for the last several years moved into movies that are using more culture, more tradition. And you feel that even if you're not part of that culture or that tradition, you feel that, you listen to the New Orleans jazz of Princess and the Frog, and like you're there and you get it and you're a part of the party. And that's inspirational for me as a musician because of not only all of the sounds I'm hearing, all the instruments that are being used, all the different accents of the vocalists, but everything all together paints such a picture. And it's like it can transport you to somewhere. And that I think is the same thing as reading a book. Reading a book does the exact same thing. You can look at a piece of art and you can do that too. You can be transported to a different place. And so it's all kind of within the same vein of entertainment, but especially something like Disney, a company like Disney that has been such a big part of my life for all of my life. It's always going to be magic to me.
Yes, it's magic for both of us for sure. And I remember your appreciation for Moana. She was just your favorite princess for the time in college. I don't know if that has changed, but I think that her story of finding herself was such a timely princess to have an appreciation for in college, because that's when you are finding yourself and you're searching for that. Like, it feels like it's dragging on and it's a mountaintop. That one scene where she's running up the mountain in order to get to the top, and it's just kind of, that's what college ends up feeling like. So what is a Disney song that has impacted you and why? This could be at any time in your Disney passion.
Moana is definitely still my favorite. That has not changed since college. I remember the first Disney song that ever had an impact on me was Reflection from Mulan. I loved Mulan. I had it on VHS, and after school every day, I'd pop the tape into the VHS and rewind it and watch it several times. I obviously, as a kid, I didn't know anything about music, but I just remember listening to Reflection and thinking, I don't know why, because I'm not Mulan, but I really feel her story. I feel that anguish and I feel her emotions. Reflection is very like, I'm such a disappointment. Like, how come I can't do anything right? Like, you feel that emotion. So I remember that being very impactful for me. Obviously, as I grew up and learned about music, I learned why that happens, what the conductor can do to kind of move that feeling and that story along. But obviously, Moana being my favorite movie, the song that really gets me now is I Am Moana, which is the one that she sings at the very end. Yes. She's been struggling the entire movie to navigate the ocean and find who she really is. And little does she know, the entire time, who she is has been inside of her, the whole movie, right? And something that I was really afraid of going into being a mother was losing myself and my identity. I'd seen it happen to so many people. You know, you have a baby and you become a completely different person. And rightly so, right? Your priorities change. You can't be exactly the same anymore. But I was terrified that I would lose my sense of direction and become someone that I didn't recognize. And I didn't want that, you know? All I knew was I love my husband and I loved our life together. And I just wanted to add a team member to our already fantastic team. So this song would come up on shuffle when I had my headphones on and my baby was crying all night long and I couldn't get him to sleep. And it would just be like a good reminder that I don't have to let the anxieties of being a parent get to me and change me. I'm still myself. I still know who I am. I'm strong and I can do this. I have it. I have what it takes. So Moana's changing me even several years later out of college. She's the best. I love her.
That's amazing. What a good reminder that even just something like a simple song can kind of, like you said, it takes us to a different place, and it's physically removing us from a situation that may seem stressful or, in your case, something that you kind of just want to get a good reminder in your head as you're going through something difficult. So that's amazing. Okay, so we talked about a song that's been influential to you as a new mom. What about a Bible verse? Has there been a Bible verse that's been particularly meaningful to you in this season?
Absolutely. I think specifically, I love Philippians 4, but 6-8 talk about things that we already know, right? It talks about bringing your anxieties and your requests to God, and He will give you the things that you ask for. He will give you peace in your heart. It's such a good reminder, especially for me in this new season. Becoming a mom is by far one of the hardest, biggest life changes I've had to go through so far. And in that, kind of similarly to my point before, you kind of just lose all those foundational, those basics that you've always had, because this is a new challenge and it can really consume you. So I think these verses are a good reminder that the comfort, the peace, the wisdom, the joy that I need is there if I ask God for it.
I think it's sometimes hard to kind of remind ourselves that we may have to ask for it. I think sometimes we can assume, well, we're a Christian, so it should already be there. And it's like, no, sometimes it can be absent, and we not only can but are encouraged to often think about asking for it, and it's okay to ask for it in those difficult times. So that's a great Bible verse, and as a reminder to new parents that are going through those anxieties. And kind of talking about the anxiety of things being kind of difficult for you, is there something that's been particularly maybe a more surprising or challenging aspect of motherhood for you? And how has your faith helped to navigate you in those moments?
The most surprising aspect of me becoming a parent, I think, was how insistent I was that I did not need anybody's help. That was something that the Lord humbled in me very quickly. But I just remember I was too stubborn, and I thought that I could do it all on my own. And I realized how bad I felt when I was struggling, when early in our newborn days, when my son had problems eating. And so he wasn't eating. So he was always crying and never sleeping. And that took a toll on all of us. And I didn't want to be a burden to others because I knew how badly I was feeling, being sleep deprived and all cried out and all these things. The reality is, personally, for me, I needed my village. I needed those people around me. I needed help. And I was just too stubborn to ask for it. So yeah, God really humbled me, and he was like, hey, actually, you cannot do this all on your own, and you don't have to. That's why I gave you people. That's why I gave you a church. That's why I gave you friends. That's why you have parents. Like, you have people that you need to rely on, and you can. So that was the most surprising and challenging aspect of being a parent so far. I'm still pretty new at this game, but that was crazy. I did not think I was gonna be as stubborn as I was.
I think especially if you are the first in your friend group to become a mom, I think that's probably the most difficult. Even though my friend in my friend group is a new mom, she has a couple older friends that have become moms long before her. So she was able to, reach out and be like, how do you do this? What is happening? Help me, please. And I think even just, I'm grateful for kind of the guinea pigs of the moms in my friend group, because I've learned so much as a woman about being a mom and that whole process. And it's just been so interesting to me to see how strong of a bond even just a group of moms can become. When you go through something that life-changing together, it creates such a special group amongst women. And I'm just so thankful that you have that in your church and in your community, and you just have your parents so close. Your parents moved to be close to you, and that's probably a huge blessing, even to just have your mom to be like, how did you do it?
Yes, it was definitely needed. My parents, I told them for so long, please don't move, like, please stay at your house where you are. But they were insistent. They were like, we are not going to miss our first grandchild. We're not going to miss you needing our help. And luckily, apparently, I was a pretty difficult baby myself. So my parents already, they knew exactly what to do when they came over. And it is nice because even just during the day, they work from home, but I just come over to their house and just bring the baby and hang out. And it's so nice, when he's being extra fussy, or if I just need an extra set of hands really fast, they can just pop in. That's been such a great blessing. And I'm actually kind of glad that I went through all the difficult things with my son, because now I know really what to offer to my friends when they're going through a similar thing. Because I know that I was the stubborn one and I didn't want the help, and people were offering hey, do you want me to come over? And I was like, no. But now I'm going to be like, this is what I'm going to offer you. Yes. You can take it or you can take it because I know what they're going to eventually have to do. So whenever the next girls in my friend group, whoever they might be, whenever they need that help during those newborn weeks, like I'm there. I'm ready. What do you need? You need me to cook? You need me to clean? You want me to stay overnight and take care of your baby with you? Like I'm there. I'm with you. It's a village. It takes a village.
Good for you, Julia. Now, someone as deeply rooted in music as you are, how do you see your role as a singer evolving now that you're a mother? We talked a little bit about how your career has changed a little bit. So, and even going back to college, I know that you talked about your thoughts on performance music has changed just as a solo artist. I have very fond memories of when you did your senior recital and you did Tangled, right?
I sure did.
Which is my favorite Disney movie. And I remember just bawling my eyes out because it was so beautiful. And so you said that you look forward to going back to work someday, whenever that may be. How do you see kind of your new challenges and how you've learned to be a mom kind of helping you to transition into going back to a school environment?
I think my role as a mom now has really changed my view on being a musician. It was actually so funny because when I started working at that school, I was already pregnant. And so I was around all these kids and I kind of learned how to corral young kids, you know, and like kind of just emulating what their teachers were doing to like relax them, get them to focus, how to kind of correct those not so nice behavior things without being a parent or like punishing them or whatever. So actually that was pretty eye-opening. I had not been around that kind of environment before, but I think my role as a singer, it has been constantly evolving. I think it always has. As I learn more things about myself and what I can do, my abilities, when I learn more about the industry of entertainment and what that has to offer, I always want to explore. I always want to learn. When I was in college, I was very convinced that I was going to be the next Beyonce and tour the world.
But you are.
Not quite. Maybe in my own living room, but that's about it. But, you know, as my career has changed since then, my career goals are also changing. And I really don't want to perform that much because performing takes time away from my family when I could be with them. I love performing, but even more so, I love being behind the scenes of creating music. I love learning how the industry works. I love production. I love writing and being behind the soundboard rather than being in front of it, being the performer. So I hope I still have opportunities to perform, but I also hope that I can do even more. I think my new career dream right now would be to work on a soundtrack for a Disney movie. I had a lot of professors in college that did that. And I think to be able to sign my name onto a big project like that would be a dream come true. And I think that my son could really appreciate that when he's a little older.
Yeah, something to look up to. I think that as he grows up, he's going to see an obvious appreciation for music in your household. And so even as you just reach for that goal, it's going to show him how, you know, like we were just talking about how Disney movies help us to reach for a goal no matter how impossible or difficult they may seem. And that's just going to instill really good values in him. So that's a great thing to reach for. Now, do you find that your faith even throughout your life has influenced the kind of music that you've wanted to create or perform? I know you said that you would love to do a Disney project someday, but has your faith ever influenced the kind of music that you wanted to create or perform?
I think yes. Even if the music I'm doing isn't specifically faith-based, I think that my choices are still a reflection of my faith. I was lucky enough that I grew up listening to a lot of different kinds of music. Even just like in worship music generally, just very different, lots of different genres, very different types of vocalists. So the choices that I make when I'm writing music or singing are very influenced by what I heard in church and what I practice and in like the kids choir. And I think that everything that I do music wise is a reflection of my faith. And I really believe that every word that I sing, every note that I write down, it can be a reflection of my heart. For example, even when I'm teaching students at that studio, it was just kids. Like it wasn't like a faith-based organization or anything. It was really important to me that I treat them with gentleness and kindness and patience and all those fruits of the spirit that we're supposed to exhibit, even when they don't extend those same things to me. In that sense, my faith is just incorporated into everything I do. My daily routine is just showing others through my actions or through what I sing, shows them what God is, shows them how Jesus affects me in my life. So my hope is that people see Jesus through the way that I present myself, whether that's in a teaching aspect or whether that's on stage when I perform or writing stuff down. I hope that everything that I do is a reflection of that.
That's great. And kind of continuing the connection with the school environment and your music passions, according to a study published by the American Psychological Association, which I will link in the show notes in case you want to read it, high schoolers who take music courses actually score significantly better on exams in certain other subjects, including math and science, than their non-musical peers. So, as someone who is in the music education field, how are you seeing music impact the lives of your students outside of class?
Absolutely. I have definitely seen this happen. Unfortunately, I did not get the good math music gene or whatever. Like
Me neither.
I'm not very good with math, but I do see during my time at that school specifically, my students that really get into it and get engaged with the curriculum, they really do score well on testing in every other subject too. It's so crazy to see the trend of the numbers go up. I think music forces you to just focus on something else for a while and learn. Music is kind of its own language, you know. It's a certain way of writing it down, certain way of hearing it, certain way of expressing it. And these skills that they learn in music class with me can also be applied to these other subjects and just kind of force you to like switch the way that you think a little bit. And I see this especially with my kids that play instruments, because that's furthering their music education and they have a deeper knowledge of music, a deeper knowledge of their instrument. And so I really encourage all my students to pick up literally anything, any instrument at all. It just really helps to exercise your brain and helps you to realize what you can achieve. I think back to when I was in elementary school and their age, and I thought music was really hard, and I thought that singing was all that I could do. In reality, it just takes practice. And when you are sitting in math class, you don't want to practice if you are bad at it, right? You don't want to sit there and grind out equations because that's hard and probably sometimes boring. And so you kind of do the same thing with music, right? Music is a muscle. You have to work it out if you want to get better. So it's very much the same thing. I'm sitting with my kids in my ukulele class and they're working really hard to learn this little song. And I'm like, this is exactly the same thing as working through your spelling flashcards. It's exactly the same. You have to sit here and grind it out or else you won't get better. But I think music also is just a lot more fun than spelling and math and language and things.
Is.
So I think music class is a little bit of a break for them mentally, and then they can kind of reset a little bit better.
Totally. You think it's a break, but in reality, it is truly helping you, like you said, to build those skills out in other subjects and in other classes, and even just social skills as well. I'm so thankful that I was a band kid because of what it taught me, even in just a public school environment, and how to get along with kids that are in your section. You're hanging out with these kids so often, and if hopefully these children do decide to continue their music education later on in life, they'll continue to get those social skills and educational skills that will help them later on in life as well. Now, the last question here, I want to ask you to speak to other new moms who are experiencing motherhood, who might be listening. How can they find strength and peace in their faith as they're going through this time of being a new mom?
New moms, the trenches are so hard, but God is bigger and He knows your struggle. He knows how the darkness affects you, and He can pull you out. He is the only thing that can pull you out for real. I think in the really hardest parts of being a new mom or being a parent generally, faith is the thing that you can really rely on 100% of the time, Luckily for me, I have an amazing support system here. My husband has literally saved me so many times when I am losing control and I don't know what to do. My parents are here for me when they can be here for me, but when you are really feeling so alone, I hope, new moms, that you can be comforted in the fact that you're not alone. You will not have to do this all by yourself. God's gift to me of my son is really how He shows me that He loves me. And this baby that I have is going to be a vessel for God to work. And so when you're really in the thick of it, it's really encouraging, I think, to remember what this is all for, right? Mm-hmm. To remember that this baby is going to do the Lord's work. So relying on Him, relying on your faith, that's where you're going to find your strength and your peace, because you're not alone. God is always there.
You're not alone. I love that, Julia. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and being so vulnerable and honest with your answers. Your story is special to me, and it's been inspiring to see how your life as a new mom and musician echoes the faithfulness and devotion of women like Hannah, even in the Bible. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for people to hopefully find some encouragement and some strength in my story. And I love talking Disney with you anytime. So
Me too. Well, thank you all for joining us on this episode of More Precious Than Rubies. And remember, whether through motherhood, music, or any other walk of life, our faith and trust in God can be our greatest song of praise. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you are worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks. Open your arms to the poor and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.